Bombshell. Turning Point USA commit fraud, says the viral video. Candace Owens brought this up on her show just, I think it was either yesterday or a couple days ago. And it's a man who says he's a CPA, I believe that's what he says, going over the tax forms from Turning Point USA, and he has questions. Now, I do think there's some interesting things to be said about the financial forms from Turning Point thus far. I have worked for nonprofits. I have started my own nonprofits. I have investigated nonprofits, and I know a lot about what they do and the shady dealings that nonprofits engage in order to funnel money and obfuscate their costs and salaries and all of these things. And that's why I don't like the industry. So that being said, this video is very interesting, but does get some things wrong that can be answered. I don't like the conspiracy theories, and the question is asked because, well, you can't accuse them of committing fraud. I'm not saying I think fraud occurred either. I think we should play this video, and I'll go through the points that he's making, and let me just play it for you. Let's roll the tape.
There's been growing concern over potential financial mismanagement at Turning Point USA. I've been looking into this and have discovered some shocking information. We're going to explore the question, did Turning Point USA commit fraud?
Just a quick point, and I'm not one for this kind of content. Shocking information. Did they commit? I'm going to go through this with you guys. There are questions. There are interesting questions, but I believe this guy, I can answer some of the things he points out, and I think he's very biased.
I'm Zach. I'm a certified public accountant, and you are watching Wolves in Finance.
I like the big, beautiful intro, but let's just jump ahead.
Organization, and I hope that they succeed. But they are not going to be able to continue Charlie Kirk's legacy if they are employing people who are stealing donations. The reason that people are concerned about Turning Point USA's finances is because statements made by Charlie Kirk himself. This is a memo written by Charlie Kirk on September 2nd, 2025.
All right, let me read it for you. It says, internal memo, Charlie Kirk, founder and CEO, Turning Point USA. Employees, September 2nd, 2025. Chief Operating Officer. Dear Team America, effective immediately, Justin Strife is taking on a new elevated role with Turning Point USA as its Chief Operating Officer. Since joining Turning Point USA in 2020, Justin led Turning Point's fundraising division and in more recent years been involved in, et cetera. We get it. In this new role, development, finance, TPUSA, faith, media, marketing, productions, asset management, distribution, Turning Point education, Blexit, HR, and legal. Wow. There's a lot of nonprofits in this network. That's a lot of nonprofits in this network. In this role, I have empowered Justin, among other priorities, to engage in an organizational-wide Doge effort. Justin will be assembling a small team to assist in this effort, which is focused on Turning Point USA. 1, becoming more efficient. 2, becoming more cost-effective, unifying organizational success around company-wide metrics and goals. And 4, reshaping company culture. I expect many positive changes to come from this forthcoming initiative and Justin's expanded role. Please join me in congratulating Justin. Okay. Now, this is the beginning of this video. I want to play the intro to this podcast as well. This is DD Got a Podcast, just the first minute or so. It's a 2-hour-long thing. We're just going to play a couple minutes.
So what caught my attention? I thought it was only Turning Point USA because that's all we hear about.
Yep.
But as you start digging into the IRS files, you find out there's 3 more. That sums it up right there.
There's actually more than 3, which I actually think is a little weird, but
why they do that? Not to help anyone, not to make the world a better place. It's that. It's strange to me when the establishment says someone is a threat and yet they're being promoted. So this is a wild story here. Superfeed. Okay. Tyler Boyer was involved in this. Weirdly, I found the developers were in the Ukraine. And then it just gets even more strange because if we go down to the next page, who's the director? Erica Kirk's mother, who is also, Turning Point gave almost $500,000 to them. For what reason? They're a publisher, right? They publish books. Oddly enough, Charlie Kirk's book was published by them. So this is the reverse of what happens, right? A publisher usually pays you in advance when you write a book. But instead, Charlie Kirk is paying them. And then same with Tyler Boyer. He would get maybe $300 on all 4. So that really caught my attention. I was like, wow, this seems like a real shady way to make their salaries appear less egregious. You can give a guy the benefit of the doubt, and I think we should, but I think when numbers get this alarming, it becomes harder to give the benefit of the doubt, you know?
This seems like pure corruption to me. And I'm just speaking for myself. In an ideal world, do you believe that this sort of activity could, in some scenarios, land some people in prison?
And the only thing I'll reiterate is I would just urge anyone that may think something's off with anything we're saying, go to irs.gov and we can provide what are called the EIN numbers. Every nonprofit has a unique number. Look for yourself. You shouldn't trust me.
So here's what I want to say about all this too. Like I just want to show you there's like these conspiracies are popping up around the finances and TPUSA. And what I will say is paying a publisher is not abnormal. The accusation is that Charlie was doing something wrong, and I don't think so. There are some questions. I'm not a fan of the nonprofit machine. I think there's a lot of unethical things. I'm not a fan of the behind-the-scenes politicking of which everyone is engaging in, and I'm getting really, really sick and tired of it. Because I've never been about that. This is why I mind my own effing business. But let me just stress. When a publisher comes to you and says they want to pay you for a book, it's usually because they see a profit. If you go to them and say, we have a book, and they say, I don't see profit, we're not going to publish your book, and you say, we need to get this book made, it's marketing for us, we want this on a resume, we want to give these books out to students, we will pay you, make it happen. That's not that unusual. We pay companies to do things for us too. I mean, it is what it is. But let me go back to the initial video on the 990s of Turning Point USA and the question of whether they committed fraud.
That is only 8 days before he was murdered. In this memo, he promotes Justin Strife as the new Chief Operating Officer, or COO, and announces a new Doge-style audit. After this memo was revealed, people obviously wanted to know what were the results of the Doge-style audit. Why was Charlie Kirk concerned with the finances of Turning Point USA right before he was murdered? Here's an exchange on...
Quick pause. Charlie Kirk was concerned with the finances of Turning Point USA just before he was murdered, but to frame it like that again, this is what I don't like about conspiracy theories. Correlation is not causation. Yes, Charlie sent this memo. A week later, he was murdered. That doesn't mean those events are connected. It's also important to note that he highlights in this video that Turning Point missed their May 15th filing. Typically every year, Turning Point and 3 other organizations in their sphere would file their tax forms by May 15th. This year, for the first time, they did not. In fact, it appears they missed their October filing extension. Appears is a strong word because it may be they filed it already and it's just not been posted publicly. So I think considering they missed their filing date, it could just be Charlie was like, guys, what is going on? Why did we miss this filing? We need to break this down. But again, I want to make sure we're not loading things with conspiracy before we actually collect the evidence. We should be looking at the evidence objectively, analyzing it, and then carrying forward. But let's play more.
X.com of someone asking that question. Why was Charlie about to audit the finances, and will it still be audited?
Because they missed their filing due to some error. These things happen.
This was responded to by someone from Turning Point named Tyler Boyer saying, we audit our finances every year. They were just audited at the end of our fiscal year in July. He then goes on to say, there is no scheming. Nonprofits have a 990 where everything is out front. No one owns anything and our salaries are transparent. If you'd like a quick course on nonprofits, here is a good start. And then he links the accountinginsights.org website where they talk about the Form 990. Okay, number 1. That response by Tyler Boyer is a little bit snarky. And I'm just showing you one of his posts.
I don't care.
There are many posts like this, and they are all just as snarky.
And
I would like to ask Tyler Boyer if he can lower the snarkiness, because it is a very legitimate question. A Doge-style audit is not the same thing as the annual financial audit, and everybody knows that.
What does that mean? Everybody knows that. What is a Doge-style audit? You're saying going through each department, firing people for redundancies. You mean like hard action and staff reductions?
Charlie Kirk wanted a second independent audit on top of the annual financial audit.
That is not that. See, this is what I can't stand about the conspiracy stuff. Just because Charlie says he wants a Doe-style audit does not mean a second independent audit on top. That is jumping to conclusions. It is reasonable to suggest Charlie wanted to do an audit that was a bit more extensive, but he may have just been saying, "I brought in a new COO because we wanted our audit this year is going to be a bit more intensive." It doesn't mean a second independent audit.
According to Tyler Boyer's post, Turning Point is not going forward with Charlie Kirk's wishes. They have canceled the audit.
He didn't say that.
The question is why? Why did they decide not to follow through with Charlie Kirk's final wish? What is also interesting is that
his final wish? You know, that's why I can't stand these conspiracy videos.
Tyler Boyer is...
Listen. There are things in these 990s that I'm going to question. Don't get me wrong. But this loaded language is just like, this is why I don't do this stuff.
The person who was replaced by Justin Strife in Charlie Kirk's memo. Tyler Boyer was the former COO of Turning Point USA from 2017. And then 8 days before Charlie Kirk was murdered, he appoints a new person as COO. Tyler Boyer steps away so he can focus more on his job as COO of their other organization, Turning Point Action.
Is the implication or the insinuation in any degree, as light as possible or as heavy as you're making it, that there was anger over this reappointment and attempted audit, so someone killed Charlie?
Isn't that a strange coincidence? Tyler Boyer was removed from his position in the same memo that Charlie Kirk announces a financial audit.
No.
Then
it's not. He hired a new COO and says he's going to lead the charge on a Doe-style audit. And he may just be saying this year's audit will be a little bit heavier. I don't know.
Charlie Kirk is murdered, and Tyler Boyer is on X.com saying that no audit is necessary.
No, he didn't. He said we do an audit every year, and they're going to do one.
So here's what I think we should do. We should follow Tyler Boyer's snarky advice. Let's go look at the 990 forms that Turning Point USA submits to the IRS every year. These contain their annual financial statements. When you look at the forms, there are some very strange anomalies. Several of the 990 forms are missing.
A little weird, but not that big of a deal, but let's hear.
Turning Point USA lists 4 related entities. There's Turning Point USA, Turning Point Endowment, Turning Point Action, and America's Turning Point. All different organizations do slightly different things. The Form 990 for fiscal year 2024 is posted for Turning Point USA, but it is missing for all the other 3 organizations. It looks like it was never turned in. This is a massive
"it looks like" is the important phrase.
Red flag. So Tyler Boyer...
It is a small red flag. I'll explain more.
Boyer is being snarky on X.com and telling people to go look at the annual financial audit, but the financial audit is missing from last year for 3 of the 4 organizations. Just to show you how strange this is, if we go back 2 years to fiscal year 2023, where we have all the financial statements, we can see that in fiscal year 2023, all 4 statements were filed on the same day on 5/15/2024. That is what normally happens. On May 15th, Turning Point would file all 4 financial statements for their organizations. But for fiscal year 2024, only 1 financial statement was filed for Turning Point USA on 5/15/2025.
So obviously with 5/15, we're looking at obviously past the deadline for the April tax filing. Very common that organizations, corporations will file extensions to October because you've got a lot of paperwork to go through. The fact that these 3 are missing is a little odd, but I wouldn't say it's like a major alarming thing to me. The reason why, this is for fiscal year 2024, which of course is a major election year, one of the most consequential, and Turning Point likely brought in a lot of money. Their filing would then likely be delayed because of the massive growth they would have in a presidential election year, which wouldn't be the same for 23, 22, or 21. 2020 may be, but Turning Point was only 2 years old at the time. So this is a big growth, a massive growth, and they missed their filing. They're not currently posted, indicating that, well, October was not, it's been a month. They may have filed on time and it's just not publicly available. We're not sure.
The other 3 are missing. This strange
Missing is, it's like loaded language. The other three are not available. We don't know why. I have questions, but there's little to go on.
decision to hide their financial statements happened 4 months before
Hide their financial statements? Come on.
Charlie Kirk was murdered. I will repeat for clarity. Someone at Turning Point decided not to file 3 of the 4 of their annual financial statements 4 months before Charlie Kirk appointed a new COO, requested a new audit, and was murdered.
Listen, I have questions about the assassination. I have questions about these 990s. Again, there's more he's going to get into about money shuffling and things that I find suspect. But what I can't deal with, brother, is the loaded language. This is the conspiracy stuff. Every morsel you find is a mountain, not a molehill, right? That's the point. They missed their filing in May. It happens. We missed a filing once, and we missed our October deadline. We're a private corporation. We're not, beholden to public 990s or anything like that. But these things happen sometimes, and I'm not going to get into full details, but mistakes happen, and we go, oh, crap, this is going to delay us. We're going to pay a penalty or something. But these things can happen sometimes. Considering 2024 was a massive year, I'm not surprised that they're overwhelmed, or there's really reasonable explanations. They didn't file by May 15th, which would have been probably a standard filing date, or already under an extension. And as of right now, the 990s are not available, as it's been 1 month since they would have filed them.
Those 3 financial statements are still missing.
Hidden, no, unavailable. Maybe not. I honestly don't know if it's untoward or otherwise. They may have filed these by October 15th. It's been a month, and they've not yet been published. Considering Charlie was murdered, I'm not surprised they may be in a bit of disarray.
Let me give you just one example of why this is problematic. Let us look at the one financial statement we do have for fiscal year 2024 for Turning Point USA. Schedule I shows grants and other assistance to organizations.
I want to just stress it says 2023 on it.
Organizations, governments, and individuals in
submitted 2025.
The United States. This schedule shows you where Turning Point is sending its money. We see that a lot of money, $8,560,625, is being sent to America's Turning Point.
Interesting.
They are sending it to their own shell company.
They are.
Now, this is not necessarily illegal, except for the fact that the financial statement for the other organization is missing.
No, unavailable. I have questions about $8.6 million, certainly, but he keeps doing
We cannot
this.
see how this $8.6 million is being spent.
Indeed, we
This
can't,
is very
but that doesn't mean anything was done illegally.
Important because there are strange variances around this money. I have pulled the last 5 years of 990 forms for Turning Point USA. Here is a table with contributions compared with the largest expense, which are the grants from Schedule I. You can immediately see a strange dip between 2022 and 2023. This dip happens because in prior years, they were sending money to Turning Point Endowment. They were transferring millions of dollars. This stopped in 2021, and they started ramping up sending money to America's Turning Point.
Indeed, they
Let's
did.
break this down. First of all, I find it really unethical that they were sending millions of dollars to their own endowment.
Wrong.
I know that a lot of nonprofits do this, but I think it is unethical. Do the donors know this is how Turning Point is spending their money?
Probably yes.
Turning Point USA is taking in donations and then sending the money to their endowment to invest in the stock market.
Yes, absolutely. The idea that if you go to the donors and say, you give me $1 million, I'll put it in the bank and sit on it and let it get destroyed by inflation, they'd say that's not an effective use of the money. Or I could say, here's what we'll do. Donate to us. We'll break it all down. The endowment is where we store money and see it grow to fight inflation. We're going to put it in various markets so that the money is not sitting there depreciating, that we're getting some kind of return so we don't lose the assets and the value. That is completely normal.
In my opinion, they should be spending donations on operating their nonprofit, not on buying investments.
Unless they have excess revenue, they don't divvy it out as profits because they are a nonprofit. So they store it in the market so that the value increases and doesn't get destroyed by inflation.
As of fiscal year 2023, they had $61 million of assets in the endowment, which was generating $1.9 million a year of investment income.
Which does not beat inflation, by the way.
Personally, I think that's an unethical way to run a nonprofit, but that's just my opinion. But what is important here is what happened to the missing $8.6 million, the amount sent to America's Turning Point in fiscal year 2024. The amount of money sent to America's Turning Point was getting larger and larger, and because the financial statements are missing, we cannot tell how this money was spent.
It's so missing. He keeps saying that. Guy, you have the financials up until this past year, and considering Charlie was murdered, I don't know if I'm going to sit here and be like, why aren't they in, like, Charlie was the guy running the show. So they may have been filed. We don't know.
If we look at the prior year, the majority of the money was spent on other salaries and wages.
Now, here's an interesting question. Here's where things actually get interesting. And the funny thing is, in order to have made it this far, most of the people who want to believe Turning Point USA was doing something wrong probably turned the video off because they're like, Tim keeps defending what they were doing. Now, here is where I have some honest questions. Listen to this. They say other salaries and wages, $3.7 million.
How is this possible when America's Turning Point reports 0 employees?
I can explain that to you. First, let's take a look at this section that he posted. Number of voting members in the body, 3. That's the minimum, my understanding is. Number of independent voting members is 3. Section 6, number of volunteers, 3. Total number of individuals employed in calendar year 2022, 0. So if this is the 2023 filing, $3 million spent on salaries. This guy says that he's a certified public accountant. I'm not sure why he's arguing this because he would know you don't list officers, directors, or executives as employees. So how do you get wage pay with no employees? They're paying potentially contractors, which they're not employees. So you might argue that's not going to be salaries or wages. That'll be other expenses. Agreed. In which case, you are paying out the officers, for which there appear to be $3 million each.
Does anyone else think that sounds a little suspicious?
No.
Let me walk you through this. We have the two organizations, the main company Turning Point USA and America's Turning Point. America's Turning Point has never reported any employees. Turning Point USA's number of employees has decreased dramatically over the last 3 years. In the last year alone, the number of employees decreased by 33%. That is a massive decrease in workforce. But while they are laying people off, their salary expense is skyrocketing for both organizations.
That is interesting. I think the simple answer is some people got a raise and many people got fired. The question about $3 million going to America's Turning Point and, or I'm sorry, 1 million, then 4 million, then 8 million, and then paying out $3 million in salaries to officers is indicative of typical shenanigans at nonprofits. And for this, I actually have questions. For what reason do you need to have 4 organizations paying out salaries to the same executives, breaking it apart? I've made this point in the past. I run many businesses, and I have done nonprofit work as a director. We have formed our own nonprofits, which we didn't really utilize because I'm not a big fan of the way the structure is. I've mentioned to you already in the past how a nonprofit will create a 501c3, a 501c4. They'll move money around. I have also pointed out how there are nonprofits that are notorious for paying their executive directors a couple $100,000 a year and saying, look, our CEO, our executive director, the equivalent, takes but a humble $200,000 a year. Then you find out that they've actually been funneling money to 3 other nonprofits where the executive director is additionally getting large sums of money in salaries they don't disclose in their principal nonprofit. That is, if I created Trust in Media nonprofit, Tim, and said, I only get paid $100,000 a year. Please donate. And then we end up with $10 million in donations. What if I created the Media Trust Network, the Media Trust Fund, and Media Trust Action, took $250,000 from from the main organization and donate it to those organizations. And then I was also the executive director or an executive of some sort receiving a salary of 100 to 200 from each organization. So the donations you were putting in were broken apart and sent to me. So I made $1 million a year. This is what I find to be strange and usually indicative of someone trying to obfuscate their money, the money that's being paid out to their directors, because they want to be able to release a 990 of their principal organization, the only organization you've heard of, and say, but he only receives but a humble median middle class salary.
None of this makes any sense. How is America's Turning Point reporting millions of dollars of salary expense when they have no employees?
Now, here's a fair point. Compensation of current officers, directors, trustees, and key employees was only $172,000. But those wages that I pointed out at $3.7 million are being paid somewhere despite having no employees and despite their current officers and directors only getting $172,000. This is where I agree with him. I just don't think he's presenting it properly.
Employees. How is Turning Point USA's salary expense skyrocketing when the number of employees is plummeting?
They're giving raises to people. Next question.
And why are the financial statements missing? What was the $8.6 million spent on? In my opinion, what I think is happening is I think there are fake people on the payroll. I think that paychecks are getting sent to people who do not really exist.
How?
And that would explain why we have a company with 0 employees with millions of dollars of salary expense. What about Tyler Boyer's argument that they have an annual financial audit every year? If what I am saying is true, why wouldn't their annual audit catch these issues? The annual financial audit for Turning Point USA, Inc. and its affiliates was performed by an accounting firm called Baker Tilly. In the notes, they explain that they audited Turning Point USA, Turning Point Action, Turning Point Endowment, America's Turning Point, and TPUSA Merch.
He then goes on to point out they've been sued, which I don't think is relevant because people get sued all the time. But he does then go on to point out that in this audit, they signed off on it. So let me see if I can pull this up after he gets to through the lawsuit stuff. Pointing out that someone was sued one time is not evidence of what's going on here, so I'm not going to play it.
Charity stole millions of dollars. This was going on year after year after year, and Baker Tilly never mentioned it in any of their audits. It makes you wonder, are they even looking at the financials? This is the same accounting firm doing the annual audits at Turning Point USA. Erica Kirk assumed the role of CEO of Turning Point USA on September 18, 2025, 8 days after Charlie Kirk was murdered. She has been the CEO for almost 2 months. She needs to answer these questions. If someone has lied on the 990 form, people go to jail for that. I want some explanation of why Turning Point USA sent $8.6 million to their shell company and then did not file financial statements. And Erica, I don't know who does the accounting at Turning Point, but if they have not been telling you about any of this, you need to fire your accountants immediately. This reminds me of what happened with Warren Buffett.
I don't care about what happened with Warren Buffett. The story with Warren Buffett is he had so many companies that they were all buying and contracting with each other. And then someone said, you know, I think there's an indictment somewhere in there.
Almost the exact same amount.
This is interesting. Let's jump to this one.
At Turning Point. And let me give you a specific example. In fiscal year 2023, Turning Point USA, which is the main 501c3 nonprofit organization, transferred $664,572 to Turning Point Action, which is the 501c4 nonprofit. This transfer was reported as reimbursement of event expenses.
Okay.
Turning Point Action then turned around and transferred almost the exact same amount, $650,000, to Turning Point PAC, which is another shell company I haven't even talked about yet. Now, this is not necessarily illegal, but it looks really suspicious.
It does. It sure does.
It looks like you are taking in tax-exempt donations at Turning Point USA and then funneling the money through your shell companies to your PAC that you can then spend on political campaigns because of less accounting restrictions. Again,
He's correct on this one. Having worked with nonprofits, one of the issues that I take and have taken is that they operate multiple shells under various tax code. One will be a tax-exempt nonprofit. And then when you donate, that goes and you can write off on your taxes, but then that organization can then donate the money to a non-tax exempt organization, which can then use it for other means, politicking or otherwise. And I don't know. I don't think it's illegal or anything like that. I just think it's strange.
It's not necessarily illegal if they structure their transactions correctly and utilize campaign finance loopholes, but it certainly looks unethical.
Yeah.
Why is it that almost the exact same dollar amount gets transferred between the organizations? The difference between Warren Buffett and Turning Point, besides the obvious fact of the difference between private companies and nonprofits, is that at Turning Point, we have missing financial statements and a memo from Charlie Kirk saying that he has concerns with the finances. The problem...
Okay. Charlie said he was bringing in a new COO who's going to lead a Doge-style audit. He did not say explicitly, I'm concerned about what's going on. He may... It could be as light as Charlie being like, yeah, let's do a Doge. Let's figure out where we can clean things up. Right now at Timcast, we have a lot of expenses. Things are expensive. And so we're doing an internal review to figure out where we can, we have like duplicate subscriptions. These things happen. We use a lot of different services, and sometimes one person will sign up, another person won't know. And so you do an internal review. It doesn't mean the world's ending. And he keeps saying missing, missing, missing as he's framing the narrative. I agree on some of the money shuffling, but missing is a leap. It may be unfiled. It may be someone is hiding them. But I think it ruins your argument when you make this approach because it allows you are strawmanning yourself.
With having multiple shell companies like this is that it becomes very easy for your employees to steal from the organization. Now, just to clarify for legal reasons, I do not have any evidence of a specific crime. We would need an FBI investigation of the books at Turning Point USA to determine that for sure. What I have presented are red flags and a lot of questions that need to be answered. This is all based on financial evidence that Turning Point themselves has posted online. Anyone can go and confirm everything I am saying. All these problems suggest financial mismanagement at Turning Point USA. And from Charlie Kirk's memo, we know that he did not understand what was going on.
That's not correct. We don't know what Charlie knew. I've had this conversation with a lot of people. I said, guys, if you were going to come to me and show me that Turning Point was shuffling money between various organizations and Charlie got a salary from each of them, this is the argument they made. The argument that Charlie didn't know what was going on is silly. Charlie would look at his bank and be like, hey, my salary's quadrupled. What's happening here? The fact that these other shells existed and were paying Charlie, as is the argument, would imply if you think untoward activity was happening, Charlie certainly knew about it. Not guaranteed, but the implication is the money shuffling Charlie was well aware of.
If someone was able to keep this hidden from Charlie Kirk, that suggests that the people involved are at the highest levels of Turning Point USA. I will repeat, because I know that a lot of people do not want to believe this. The financial statements suggest that someone at the highest levels of Turning Point USA is stealing the donations. I don't understand why no one is looking into this.
Lots of people are looking into it, actually.
Erica Kirk has been the CEO for 2 months, and she needs to start answering questions. I keep coming back to the statement from Warren Buffett's lawyer. When he was looking at the diagram of all the shell companies, he said, there's got to be an indictment in there somewhere.
The point was Warren Buffett didn't commit a crime, but you can confuse the public and indict them because they wouldn't understand anyway. Basically, he's saying, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. I think there's interesting questions, and I have mentioned this even before Charlie was murdered. Nonprofits shuffle money around unethically. They do it because the law allows it, and why wouldn't they run their business the most effective way possible? I pointed out that even Turning Point has a 501c3 and C4. In fact, James O'Keefe with Project Veritas ran a 501c3 and a 501c4. It's because there are legal restrictions on what a C3 can do and what a C4 can do. C4s are not tax exempt but can engage in politics. C3s are tax exempt and can't engage in politics. So you create two organizations to separate the politics from the charitable actions. I have questions about where those salaries were paid to. Indeed, you should be able to look at the 990s and see where this breaks down. I have questions about why a month after the filing, they've not been made available. But I would say something like, well, with Charlie being murdered, I'm sure there's a bit of disarray in trying to figure out who's going to pick up the slack. And could you imagine what happened if something happened to me? What would this company do? I mean, I'm the CEO and the principal talent. It would be a bit of disarray. So I'm not a fan of the accusations of impropriety considering they murdered Charlie. That being said, I do think there are fair and honest questions about the accounting practices. As this man points out, this guy Zach, Warren Buffett's companies had grown so quickly, things were a bit messy. He restructured, cleaned it up, and paid a fine. It could be that simple. But the argument here is, if something is happening, the insinuation we're getting, not just from this, but from many other individuals, is that somebody was stealing money, Charlie wanted an audit, and then he died, as if to imply that the real murderer was something having to do with stealing money. Now, I don't know for sure. I think Occam's razor suggests that there's an angry leftists. Charlie was really effective and helped Trump win, and this person took his life. Because I don't know how you reconcile the FBI lying about everything. It's just, listen, all of this stuff, the FBI statements and investigations, it is very, very grand and circuitous to be a principal conspiracy against Charlie because of something untoward. So I think the Occam's razor suggests it's probably this transferee boyfriend guy. But what's the implication otherwise? Somebody tried taking over Turning Point the same way that James O'Keefe was ousted. They think they can do it. So Charlie was removed from the picture? Certainly anything is possible. What do I know, right? What I can say is the simple solution. A fast-growing organization only a few years old, Charlie built it up massively, and things were messy. Money got moved around, people weren't paying attention, and it's probably incompetence before malice. However, it's possible. Untoward things were happening. Money was being shuffled and paid out in ways that should not have been, and maybe Charlie didn't know. And maybe this audit was a threat to someone. What can I say? Interesting nonetheless, but not hard proof of anything just yet. I'm going to wrap it up there. Smash the like button, subscribe. Thanks for hanging out. I know everybody who wants it to be a conspiracy is yelling at me saying I'm wrong. It is what it is. These are my thoughts. I'll have a lot more to say later. Thanks for hanging out. I'll see you next time.